Welcome back to the show, everybody. So today I'm going to be doing a solo episode, and today's episode is going to be on household products that I've used to improve my overall health. So, I've talked a lot about before about nutrition, supplements, training, various different aspects, but I've never done a solo podcast specifically on household items that can drastically improve your overall health. So I think you actually may be surprised by some of the findings that I'm going to talk about today. And so, without going into that any further, I'm just going to get started. So, the first one, which I have posted about before, haven't chatted about too much on the podcast though, is fluoride-free water. So, this is something that I made a change to probably about 2 years ago, something around there. And the reason for this is, for many. So, one that, is a little bit more less obvious or not as talked about on social media or just in science in general would be that it can affect your thyroid. So, there have been studies that have shown that, there are higher rates of hypothyroidism, so low thyroid function in places that have more fluoride. And so, if you don't know what hypothyroidism is, so that would be a condition where you have a low or functioning thyroid, and as a consequence, it's going to be hard to lose weight. You also may feel a little bit depressed, and just in general, you may not feel as well. You may have a little bit slower cognitive function, a little bit of brain fog. So, having a highly functioning thyroid or optimally functioning thyroid, because obviously, if it goes too high, that's another issue as well, is going to be critical for your overall health and your overall metabolism and how you feel. So, that would be one reason why I switched to using fluoride free water over fluoride water. The second one I'm going to talk about here is probably one that you have heard about before. And this would be due to the neurotoxicity that it causes and the IQ reduction that we've seen. And this has been shown in various different studies, and in recent meta-analysis that showed it as well. And basically, what they found is that the more fluoride water that kids consume, the lower their overall IQ is. So, this is something that I think a lot of parents may be concerned about. Obviously, you want to give your kids, the very best, outcome that you can, give them the best chance that you can. And, by removing fluoride from the water, you may be, in fact, giving them a better chance to have a higher IQ, which is obviously just relates to better, success overall in life. Certainly doesn't, mean the only thing, but you do want to give them every chance or opportunity you can to, improve themselves or give them the best opportunity for the life that they can have. And one thing that you can do is, remove fluoride from your water, and because of that, you are going to be removing that risk of an IQ reduction. So again, really important point there, because it affects so many different people, so many different children, and obviously with adults it affects them as well. But a lot of the studies have been done on children specifically. Um, the third thing that I want to chat about today regarding fluoride-free water is that it can accumulate in your in your pineal gland. So your pineal gland, as you may or may not know, is responsible for producing melatonin and regulating your circadian rhythm. So if you do have an accumulation of fluoride in your pineal gland, that could potentially be one of the reasons why you may not be sleeping well. And we know for so many different reasons. Andrew Huberman's talked about this so many times, but circadian rhythm is critical for your overall health. That's why getting sun in the morning is so good. That's why putting blue blockers on at night is so good. And so you want to do everything you can to optimize your circadian rhythm. And one thing you can do that is by removing fluoride from your water. And so, how do you remove fluoride from your water is probably what, many people are asking. So the product that I use, and I'm not paid to say this, is called Water Drop. And so it's a reverse osmosis process that you just basically install under your sink. It'll come with a separate faucet. So it is convenient in that way, because, now you have, two faucets. So you have, your fluoride free water, that you can be used for drinking. But if you want to, someone else wants to wash their hands at the same time, or, just use water for another reason, they can actually do that at the same time. So it is kind of convenient in that way too. So it's been really helpful for myself and my fiance in our household. So once you have that fluoride-free water, the next step is you want to put it into a bottle that's going to be BPA free, or a bottle that is not going to contain anything that could potentially disrupt your endocrine system. And I'll get into that in just a sec. But before I get into that, so the bottle that I use a Yeti bottle. Again, you just need really a stainless steel bottle. Anyone will really do. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that the bottle that you're using is BPA free. You're not made with any plastics. And so why do you want to do that? Well, there was a 2024 Umbrella review that concluded that many plastic associated chemicals, including BPA, BPS, BPF, are linked to endocrine disruption, metabolic dysfunction, and also reproductive issues. So, this causes a host of different issues in the human body. So you absolutely want to avoid putting your water in anything plastic. And generally speaking, it's going to be a lot worse if you are drinking from plastic that's hot. So, if you have like a water bottle and, it's very cold, that's going to be less damaging, or probably leach less overall harmful chemicals into your bottle than, say, a water bottle that's been out in the sun all day, or that's, directly in the sun. That's really a disaster for, leaching, various different harmful chemicals that can really be, disruptive to the body. And so, like I said, it can mess up with your endocrine system. So, all of your hormones, cause some metabolic dysfunction. So, again, we know metabolic dysfunction is, linked to mental health and improvements. So some metabolic dysfunction, is linked to poor mental health outcomes. And metabolic dysfunction is also linked to worse cardiovascular disease, or increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And it has, as I mentioned earlier, been linked to reproductive issues. So, this may be causing some infertility for people. So, again, anything you can do to, reduce any plastic is something that you absolutely want to do. And, it's a very simple fix. You just need to, get BPA free bottles. Even the, you know, uh, bottle that I have here, is stainless steel inside. So, that's what I drink out of when I work out, or just even when I'm around the house. Keeping up with the, BPA and why you want to, remove any plastic bottles. There was actually another systemic review meta-analysis that showed that high BPA levels are associated with chronic kidney disease. So a lot of people, unfortunately, do struggle with chronic kidney disease, especially if you have high blood pressure and you're getting older. That can lead to, a host of different things, including dialysis, which is very inconvenient for a lot of people. So you want to do everything you can to prevent chronic kidney disease. And one thing you can do is just eliminate the use of plastic water bottles, or plastics in general, because again, that is linked to it in, a meta-analysis study. So, meta-analysis are studies that when they pool all the studies together, what does it show? So again, it's not just one study. This is multiple studies. Um, and this is probably the most, surprising one that you may um, hear about. But, you know, BPA in plastic is also linked highly to obesity, and specifically abdominal obesity. So this was a meta-analysis study, and they show that for every 1 nanogram per milligram of BPA increase, it raised obesity by 11% and abdominal obesity by 12%, which is absolutely crazy. So, we know there's a huge obesity epidemic. We know there's so many different reasons for that. Certainly, eating more calories and ultra processed foods is, and the sedentary lifestyle that a lot of people have is, probably the main driver of that. But there also are some other reasons, and this is definitely one of the other major reasons. And again, this is a dose dependent thing. So meaning that the more BPA you have, the worse this is going to get. So again, for each 1 nanogram per milliliter of increase in BPA, that raised obesity by 11% and abdominal obesity by 12%. So, you need to reduce this as much as possible if you want to prevent obesity. And again, specifically abdominal obesity. So, that's kind of what I have on water, and that's what I do to protect myself. from fluoride and from BPA when I'm drinking water. Moving on to something else. So, we're going to talk a little bit about air quality now. So, one thing I've done now for the past maybe 3 or 4 years is I've gotten air doctors. So, air doctors are purifiers that you can use. It doesn't have to be air doctor, it can be something else. And again, I'm not paid by anyone in this entire podcast on the products that I'm using. I'm just telling you the products I use personally and have been helpful for me and my fiance in our house. So, the air doctor, this is something again that removes any kind of harmful chemicals that in the air. And so, there's been many studies on this that have shown that it can actually have a very significant impact on your health. So I'll start off just with cardiovascular benefits. So there was a meta-analysis of 10 trials with over 604 people, and they found that using a portable air cleaner reduced overall exposure to various different particulates, and it led to a significant drop in systolic blood pressure. So we know systolic blood pressure is linked to cardiovascular disease, high risk of stroke, high risk of heart attacks or myocardial infarctions. So we absolutely want to do everything we can to make sure that our systolic blood pressure is well controlled. Again, you want it to be about 120. The optimal blood pressure is 120 over 80 or 120 over 70. And so, by using just an air filter, you may actually be able to decrease your overall blood pressure. And that's actually ties a little bit back with what we were talking about earlier regarding, eliminating the BPA. So the BPA, as I mentioned, leads to a reduction in chronic kidney disease. And as I also mentioned, having high blood pressure is one of the drivers of chronic kidney disease. So you can see how, layering all these together will improve your overall health, and some of them actually synergize with one another. And there was another study regarding cardiovascular benefits on using air filters, and it was the JAMA. So this was in a internal medicine journal, and it reported that just 3 days with using the air purifier led to meaningful systolic reductions, and this is actually comparable to even changes with diet. So pretty substantial evidence here, that just by using an air purifier, even for a few days, can actually reduce your overall systolic blood pressure. And like I mentioned, reducing your systolic blood pressure, that's the top number again, that's going to lead to a reduction in your overall cardiovascular risk, for stroke, myocardial infarction, you kind of name it. So, a real easy fix, again, is just getting an air purifier. Um, Keeping up with the benefits of getting an air purifier. So it's not just limited to cardiovascular benefits. It's also, can be beneficial for actually cancer. So very surprisingly, but using an air purifier can reduce the risk of breast cancer by 28%. So that's pretty significant overall. We know that a lot of people, unfortunately, suffer from breast cancer and get diagnosed with breast cancer sometimes early on in their life. And by using an air filter, that's just one more thing that you can layer on top of it that can reduce overall breast cancer. Um, Also, with using air filters, we talked about cardiovascular benefits. We've talked a little bit now about the breast cancer. But what about for your lungs or for your overall breathing? So there actually have been studies again that have shown that by using an air filter, it actually can decrease your risk of overall asthma and improve your overall breathing. So, by using one thing, just one air filter, we get reductions in cardiovascular disease, reductions in cancer, and then improvements in your overall breathing, reductions in asthma. And the one study was really significant in reducing asthma and asthma symptoms in kids. So, something that I think is definitely worth investigating a little bit further, and potentially getting something that some kind of air filter into your home. Especially again if you're someone who wants to prevent any kind of cardiovascular disease, cancer, and just improve your breathing and your overall health. Um, but in terms of improving the air quality, so we talked about the air doctor, but I'm actually going to move on to something else. that may be actually a little bit surprising. So snake plants. And this was, very surprising when I actually looked into it. And snake plants, if you're not familiar with them, they're actually really easy to maintain. They only need to be watered about every 2 to 3 weeks, which does make it, very, very convenient. But they've actually found this is a NASA clean air study from 1989. So, it is fairly old, but what it found is that just by using snake plants, it removed formaldehyde, benzene, and trichloroethylene in sealed chambers, including an 80% drop in formaldehyde in 4 hours. So, that's pretty crazy how effective just by using snake plants, you can actually purify your air and get rid of various different carcinogens. Um, and there is some other real world evidence for this as well. There was a 2014 review that concluded that potted plants improve mood, reduce anxiety, and boost productivity. So that's pretty effective way to not just clean up your air, but also just improve your overall health. We have evolved to be around the forest, to be around green, and for a lot of people, unfortunately, that's not something that we do very much daily. We don't see the trees as much as we should. We don't sit on the grass, all these different things that our ancestors used to do. So, it kind of makes sense that by improving our environment, by having more plants in our environment, it could improve our overall brain function, our health, and our productivity. So, a couple different reasons to use the snake plants. One again is obviously improving the air quality, but also to just improving your overall brain health and your mood and how you feel. So we've talked now, about water. We've talked about improving air health. So now I'm going to talk about something that what we cook with. We're going to talk about some toxic frying pans. So toxic frying pans are rampant. They're everywhere. There's also, various different products out there that claim to be non-toxic, which I'm going to talk about as well, that still have a lot of toxic chemicals in them that could be detrimental to your health. And so, just to get this out of the way right away, I use titanium exclusive cookware. So all of my cookware is titanium exclusive. I don't use anything else. And so, what are the reasons for this? Well, PFOAs, that's one of the chemicals that can be found in these nonstick cookwares or these nonstick frying pans. Well, meta-analysis showed that they actually increase your ALT, one of your liver enzymes, by 117%. So, what you really want to do is, reduce any kind of PFOAs that you can be exposed to. And again, just by using titanium cookware or stainless steel cookware, you can do that. The one of the issues with stainless steel is that it's not non-stick, but there are some ways that you can reduce that just by using, say, a little bit more cooking oil. And like I've talked about in the past, if you are going to use cooking oil, refined avocado oil is definitely your best bet for that, just because it has such a high oxidation point. It's around 450 degrees Celsius. So you can cook your food fairly hot without exposing yourself to oxidized fats. Um, so you may be wondering about a couple different cookware products, and I am going to talk about those. So one of them is Hexclad. A lot of people have purchased these products, and I'll be completely honest. I actually did have a Hexclad. I had two Hexclad pans, and when I dug into it, a little deeper, I found out some things about them that I didn't like. First of all, they had a lawsuit against them. They were claiming that they had non PFA cookware, but they were actually using these PTFE chemicals instead. And they were claiming that because they were using non PFA cookwares, that their pots and pans and all their products were non toxic, which is not in fact the case. And now they've got this newer version with Terabond that they claim to be, that they claim to be having no PTFEs, unlike their old one. But just because of the history of the company and the fact that they're calling it Terabond and not necessarily really releasing all of the details of what exactly that is, and that it is some kind of, artificial, made, non-stick product. I just want to stay away from it completely. Maybe the Terabond, will prove to be, fairly healthy overall. I just don't want to take any risks. And like I said, I don't like the history of the company. And so, I've decided to just return all of my Hexclad paints. Um, and so just something that I wanted to mention because I know they got me on Instagram with like the Gordon Ramsay and all this kind of stuff. They had some really good marketing and I fell for it. And then they did work fantastic, but unfortunately, I just want to stay away from, the potential chemicals that they have or that they're using to make these products. And so that's the reason, why I'm staying exclusively to titanium cookware. Another one, Our Place. I know there's some big influencers out there that, are promoting this as, potentially safe. And I think they do use quite a bit of titanium and it may be better than Hexclad overall, but still, there is some kind of, enamel or ceramic coating. I don't think it's 100% titanium. And so for that reason, again, I just don't want to take any chances. I may be being, a little bit overly concerned here. But again, if there's options out there that are, completely 100% titanium, why take the risk? And so for me, I'm just staying away from Hexclad, staying away from Our Place, and just using exclusive titanium cookware. So this leads me to the next product, which I want to talk about, which is glass Tupperware. And so you can probably guess now why I've switched to glass Tupperware over plastic Tupperware. And this is something, fortunately, that I've done, probably decades ago now. So, thankfully, I made that switch because, as we all know, especially if you're going to be reheating things within plastic Tupperware, you're going to be leaching a lot of BPA, a lot of plastic chemicals in there. And we know now, from earlier discussions that, by having BPA leach into our food and other plastic chemicals, it can really increase a risk of various different diseases and health effects, including having estrogenic effects. So it can actually lead to, more estrogen in the body. And that's something that a lot of us, are wanting to avoid. And again, that may be part of the reason why it can be linked to certain different cancers. And so by, using glass Tupperware over plastic Tupperware, you are going to be reducing your risk to various different BPA and other plastic chemicals. Um, and so, one thing too that I want to mention on this is sometimes the Tupperware will come in glass, but then the top of it may be made with something different. It could still be plastic. And so make sure that if you are going to be reheating your food, that you do take the top of it off, because if not, then, it may be leaching some different chemicals like BPA into your food because, again, if it's made with glass on the bottom but plastic up top, then it's not really a full glass Tupperware. So make sure that you either buy, a full glass Tupperware, or if you do have one where the bottom is glass and the top is plastic, just make sure that you remove that plastic lid before you put it into the microwave. So one of the last things I'm going to talk about on this podcast is different products that you can use to help actually improve your sleep. And so, there's so many different sleep products out there now. Sleep Aid is one of the ones that a lot of people are advertising for. And, unfortunately, it's extremely expensive. And they do keep updating it too, which maybe got to be a little bit frustrating for the people who, buy that product and then find out just a year later that it gets updated again. But you know, we do know that by having a cool environment, it does significantly improve sleep. So there was actually a randomized control trial that showed that just by having a cooler temperature in your room, you can actually increase your overall total sleep by 31 minutes, which is pretty significant. And so, the big way that you can do this, the big way that I do this, is by using a product called a bed jet. So a bed jet is not nearly as expensive as many of the products out there. It's well under $1,000 and it's extremely low maintenance, meaning like there's no water or anything like that involved. It's just blowing air under the sheet. And so by doing that, you do have this temperature controlled way to keep yourself really cool at night. And that'll drastically improve your overall quality of sleep for a lot of people. The other thing too is, obviously, and even for myself, I like it, very cool. Emily likes it a little bit warmer. And so, because of that, this is just a way that I can keep my half of the bed super cool, and she can keep hers a little bit warmer. Because some people, may not like it as cool as others, but as I mentioned, we all do sleep better in a cool environment. But that is going to vary for some people. I like it to be extremely cool at night. Like I can even go down to like 60 to 64 degrees Fahrenheit, as like say the temperature controller or the air conditioner. Some people maybe more like 64 to 68. And so, there's always going to be a little bit of variability from person to person. But again, the BedJet product that I use, I can't really say enough about it. It's very easy to use, very easy to set up, and there's really low maintenance to it. There's no water like you got to use for, some of the other products out there. And it's just has drastically improved my sleep overall. Um, but what can you do if don't have access to a bed jet, or it's just not in the budget right now? One thing you can actually do is just cool your forehead. So anyone can get a real cold face cloth and just put it on their forehead. By doing that, you can really cool down your overall body temperature, and that can actually improve insomnia. And that's actually been shown in various different clinical studies on PubMed. So you can go look those up for yourself. And again, it's a really easy way to do that. Again, in the middle of the night, maybe the product, or the face towel that you're using has kind of heat up a little bit. You may have to go to the washroom, but when you get up to go pee, which a lot of people do once a night, you can just soak it again and put it on your forehead again, and it should help with cooling you down and help you get a good night's sleep. So a couple different tips on how you can sleep, and a couple different, not necessarily products. I wouldn't really call a washcloth a product, but just an easy way that you can cool yourself and potentially really improve your overall sleep at night. So that's what I have for you today, there, guys. So I hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and certainly as I learn more products, or as I introduce more products into my life that I find to be really helpful, I'll definitely come back and have another podcast on that. So thanks so much, everyone, for listening. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I'll be back with another podcast soon.